Hello again. I was having a discussion with Mr. Lincoln because he was building a curved diamond just like this one. Well, not just like this one, much better than this one. We were talking about cutting the gaps for the electrical separation, and he was saying that he used a razor saw. Now, I don't know if you guys have tried cutting rail with a razor saw. I have no idea how he would do that. Unless he's got a much smaller one than I have. This will cut. It's a nice skinny blade. It's about 16 thousandths, and if you get it going really straight, you can make a gap of about 16 thousandths. The other way that I've seen guys do it, but I have a flex shaft for my Dremel. These are the ones that I get. Mr. Fujiwara gets them. Dedeco, I think, is what they're called. But these are Dremels, and these are about 27 thousandths wide. And I think they make thinner ones. The Dedeco ones I think are 15 or so thousandths. Critical part about using one of these is that you keep the wheel actually vertical when you're going in there to get it. And you see how wide it is? So like if you were cutting the gap right in here, that's where the gap should be, right there, you have to get down in there and trying to get all the way through that with this wheel is going to be tough to not nick up the other rails on the other side. Out here where it's open, let's see here, you're going to have to cut a gap right here and right out here. Well, that wouldn't be too bad because you got a lot of width. But where in here where the tight track work is, I don't like using those. So what I was telling him about was a jeweler's saw. I actually got this one when I was in high school for a jewelry class that I took, one of the electives that we had. Now these have the finest blades that I could find at the time, and these again are 35 years old. So that's 12 thousandths. So that makes a really nice, tiny little gap. Key to using these is when you put it in here, you can see that it's loose. I've got it tied into the bottom clamp. And when you go to tighten it up, if you look right here, see this is the end of the saw blade right there. And when I go to tighten it up, I get this loose, but the blade does not reach all the way across the nut. So I'm pulling this frame towards me with the end of it on my chest, or your belly, whichever. Get the blade tight in there. Then take your little pliers, because my old arthritic fingers cannot, and I felt it pop there, so not my fingers, the blade, it slipped, because there are little knurls in there to help you hold the blade. Anyway, what you want to do is get the frame tensioned and then snug that up. Okay, now that blade's really tight in there, and just like any saw or file, you want to use a downward. I have the teeth, you probably can't see that, the teeth are aimed down, so I can pull down on it. I never want to push on the blade. As the pushing action, you're forcing it, and you can go off and you'll snap the blades really easily. Now to get started, to get a piece started, obviously I want to have my piece of track with the saw blade in it. Figure out where I'm going to go, and if I'm going to cut this gap right here, I'll feed it up through those ties, put this way down here, out of the way, let it hang right there. Okay, pull the frame tight, set the set screw. Alright, and now it's in there. One of these little pan of ice. I just hang on to it like this, and to get the blade started I will push just lightly, but I'm not putting any downward pressure. All I'm doing is cutting a groove in that first rail for the saw blade to sit in, and I'm supporting the whole rail, pushing it down on the vice jaws to give it good firm support. Now when I start to saw, I'm going to pull, get it going nicely, make sure you're square with the tie, you're not running into the tie, and then I keep working it at an angle, so I'm not pulling it straight down, I'm sawing basically across the rail. So I'm pulling, it may look like I'm pushing it back and forth, but there's no pressure on the backstroke. And as you start to finish, then you can go more vertically and lessen up on the pressure. You really want the saw, the weight of the saw, and just the pulling action to do the work. And there I'm through. Okay, and then you finish that up with a little file, and you're good to go. The last one I got was at Michael's. I think I paid maybe 14 bucks for that, and a package of blades. 3 more blades that I still have from jewelry class in high school. And I don't know how many teeth per inch they are. Somewhere around here, wherever my other handle is, I have a whole nother package of blades, and the blades are pretty cheap. But like I said, if you take care of them, they'll last you a long time. Make lots and lots of cuts with them. Okay, that was one of the things that I wanted to cover. The other thing was on the subject of laying these tracks like this. Now I laid this most curved route first and then cut the gaps in these rails to allow these cross rails to snuggle down in there. When you're making this cut for this gap, be aware that you only want to gap these. You want to cut a gap wide enough for this rail and guardrail, but only wide enough for the head of the rail. Don't cut it so wide for the base of the rail, because you're going to notch these cross rails on the base to fit over top of these rails and guardrails. You know, so you're notching halfway down on this curved route here, but only cut it as wide as the heads of the rails. On the bottoms of these rails, you have to gap it wide enough for the base. Now, I don't know if you can see it here, but the base of this rail right in here is carved away. There's a big gap right there. Right there. So I carved a little too much away. But really, once you get it painted and weathered, you know, as long as you don't go real crazy, you can hide that. And I could fill that with solder and then come back with my little razor saw. That is one good thing about a razor saw. You can come back in here and saw out your solder, and it would fill all that in. You wouldn't even hardly notice it there. And I could fill that with solder and make it pretty. But this was my test, so I'm not going to use this. I'm going to build another one, contest layout. And that's what I'm out here doing tonight, but I wanted to make a little video of what Jim and I talked about. And maybe it'll help some other folks using this method. So, many thanks to Tim Waris, and kudos to Jim for giving it a try and posting his results. Thanks. Talk to you later.